Terrainformer is a sculpting tool for Unity's terrain system. It is in every way better than the built-in tools. So first off, I'll show you how it's better. With the built-in tools, this is as big as a brush I can use, and I can only sculpt this much of the terrain at once. With Terrainformer, you can make the brush size as big as you want it to be. Of course, the maximum is as big as the terrain itself is. So you can see I actually sculpted the entire terrain at once. Another thing about the Unity terrain tools, the built-in ones, is that it requires the mouse to move. You can also notice it has a bit of this artifacts here, because I'm guessing internally using a texture which might be a bit low resolution, so it's not really the best thing for sculpting terrain. Another problem is how it requires a mouse to move. I think I already said that, I don't know. And then also because it works on a raycast system, if I'm sculpting here, it'll move towards the camera, which might be annoying. Another thing is, if I say I'm sculpting this part for some reason, and then I just move over here, you'll notice it will start sculpting here, so that might not be what you want to happen. With Terrainformer, however, by default the projection mode is on plane, so instead it actually just sort of, you can think of it more like moving the cursor horizontal or vertical. It'll sort of move to that position on the terrain. And if you want to, you can switch over from the plane mode to the terrain mode, which will work just like Unity. In some cases you actually want this behavior. In some cases you don't. Like I think in this case with this bumpy terrain, I'd rather be using plane. And another thing that's special about Terrainformer is that you can import your own brushes. With Unity's tools, you can only use these built-in ones. And you can import your own brushes by going into the Terrainformer folder, Textures, Brushes, and you just place any squared black and white texture, where white means it has no effect, black means it has the full effect of the brush. And that's all you have to do. It'll take care of the rest. It'll change the settings for you, and it'll list them in the selection part. So this is a custom brush right here, so I'll start using it. And I can cycle between the brushes by pressing O to go backwards and P to go forwards. And you can change these settings. You can change every shortcut in the settings area. You can also, if you want to, have text as a toolbar style. Maybe you want that instead of the icons. You can make it so it'll always show the brush selection. So with that ticked, if I go back, you'll notice that I'm able to select the brush at any time I want to. I don't have to click this part on the side. I can change the brush size preview to these 3 different sizes, so it'll be a decent bit bigger with 64 pixels compared to 48, but I'll stick to 48 for now. There's also scene view information for like displaying the current height that your cursor's hovering over, the projection mode, and the current tool. And you can turn any of these off and turn all of it off if you want to. So you'll notice up here there's no information right now. But if I turn this on, if I only want height, the current height, you'll see it only displays that. And then I can just say add these two, actually turn that one off, and you can see it updates to that. Another Terrainformer unique feature is you can do random spacing. So this essentially will stamp the terrain at a random interval. In this case, it's ranging from 1 to 30. If I want to, I can just make this always be at least a 1 gap. Or I can make it a little bit more of a range like this. I'll reset the terrain. You can see it sort of does little bursts, but then it has little gaps between them because the range is that way. There's also random offset, which is actually on 0 right now. I want it to be a bit bigger than that. You can see it randomly offsets it here. And random rotation will randomly rotate the brush in this range from -180 to 180 in this case. So it'll sort of be stamping it in every single angle, actually making it like a circular formation. And of course, if you want to, you can make it a smaller range, like say this, where it's a bit less circular. And there's a few procedural tools with Terrain Former, like even though this is a custom brush, I can add fall off to it, and then if I want to, I can make that fall off change the alpha of the brush. So you can see between it off and on, you can just see a tiny bit of a difference. If I make this a bit bigger, well, a bit more noticeable, hopefully you can see the difference easier. I'll go to a different brush to show. And the first brush here is a full-on procedural brush where it's completely generated just from this fall-off. So if I change this fall-off, it'll change the shape of it. So in this case, it'll make a cone because it's a complete linear fall-off. The default fall-off is this one, which does this. It's a bit more of a rounded cone. And of course, you can change the fall-off to be anything you want. It can be crazy and do something like that. Doesn't look very good, but it's doable. So I'll fix the fall-off. And with the custom brushes, you can change the angle. And of course, random rotation changes the angle as well, but it only changes the angle while you're sculpting. There's the raise lower mode, which, as you can see, raises the terrain. I'll use a procedural brush for this. I can raise the terrain with this. If I hold shift, it does the opposite. It lowers the terrain. And if I hold control, it'll interactively increase the terrain or lower the terrain. The smooth tool does as what you think it'll do. It smooths the terrain you're clicking over. And you can notice this actually works a lot faster and more noticeably than Unity's built-in smooth tools. So I'll show you what Unity's does. I have to move the mouse to make it work as well. So here it is doing that. So I'll undo those changes and then use terrain formers. And you can see it very, very quickly just completely sculpted that smooth that part out more like. And if you want to, you can actually change the smoothing radius. It'll make it a bit slower, but it'll make it have like sort of faster results, more noticeable results. And you can smooth the entire terrain by clicking this Smooth Entirety button. And these iterations only affect when you smooth all the terrain at once. The Set Height mode, as you can see, has this second cursor brush at the top. This indicates where it's going to sculpt up to, or more like set the height up to. If I hold shift in this mode, it'll set the height to where I clicked on the terrain, and you can see I can just move this any way I want to, and then I can sculpt that. The flatten mode works similar, but it has a few other features. While in the flatten mode, there's a few modes, and the default one's called flatten, which does this. It's wherever you click, it'll make the terrain above it go down to where you click to. There's the bridge mode, which will change both the heights lower and higher to essentially just set the height of the terrain to where you clicked on. It's like if I click it here, it'll set to this height. And then there's an extend mode, where it'll simply just extend the terrain out and not affect any terrain bigger than it. There's the generate tool, which has this fall off curve and a height option. If you click click generate linear ramp, it'll just make this small ramp. If I make the height much bigger, this is the full size of the full height of the train itself. So you can see if I change the shape of this to be, say, something little bit crazy like this, you can see it makes that shape. And then there's also a circular ramp, which makes like a little sandcastle type shape, and I can reset this back to the default. And I can definitely see the circular ramp being useful for starting like little islands. Like if you want to make a little island only a few meters high, you can see it does that. And I forgot to mention that the other tools also have the control, also known as the interactive modes. So say if I make this train a bit higher, if I hold control and click, it'll interactively apply the brush, and the same applies to the smooth tool. So I'll make some bumpy terrain to smooth it out. I'll turn random rotation off. And if I interactively do it, it'll actually interactively smooth the terrain like this, holding control. The settings actually are quite in depth. Obviously you can change the projection mode, or as it's known in here, it's called sculpt onto. You can change the increment in which the brush size is changed. So say, if the control to increase or decrease the brush size by default is the left and right square bracket. So you can see the speed at which I'll go to a procedural brush. You can see the speed at which it increments is, well, it gets a bit slower at this point because it actually is taking a long time to calculate all these brush samples. They can't really be avoided unless I make it multi-threaded or something in the future. But you can see how it's incrementing at this specific increment. That's based on this property. So if I want to make it increment smaller amounts at once, if I do 0.2%, it'll, as you can see, increment a lot slower. If I make it increment faster, I'll make it 2%, and it's a lot faster now at incrementing. Show brush grid, that will show, make the brush a bit bigger. It will show this grid sort of showing you where the height at which you initially click down on is, and it's also actually where the plane, the projection mode plane, is actually positioned at. You can change the brush color to anything you want, and of course you can make it have more alpha, less alpha. You can actually make it invisible by making it have no alpha. So I'll show you what it looks like. This is a pale orange with low alpha. A thing you might notice with Train Format and the built-in tools is that if I'm sculpting everywhere and I cover the entire area, you can see the performance goes down. This, I'm guessing, is down to this happening. You can see how the more area I drag on, I sculpt on, it must be setting these LEDs to be showing the highest detail levels, which must slow down performance for some reason a lot. Even if you have a pretty powerful computer, it still slows it down. So even Unity's built-in tools do this, but there's an option in Terrain Format to always update terrain LEDs, where in this way it'll actually remain pretty responsive, even if I'm actually sculpting a lot of the area at once. It actually is updating the terrain LEDs, and somehow that actually is faster than not updating them and then showing the raw detailed ones. If you want to, you can have the toolbar be icons or text, so text is just going to show them like that. I've already showed the brush selection, always show brush selection, and yeah, you can change all the shortcuts to anything you want to. So say if I change this to say Y, and I go here, I'll press Y right now, and it'll be increasing the brush speed. And if you make a mistake and want to go back, use restore defaults. And this is my guide of Trainformer. Hope you enjoyed.